about two neglected kittens. They had no idea what they were in for. Still, they figured that they'd rescued countless cats over the years, so they likely wouldn't be too surprised at whatever they were about to face. But when volunteers finally arrived at the shelter, they realized the situation was so much different from anything they'd ever experienced. The shelter staff took in the poor cats and started treating them immediately. They knew they had almost no time to spare. When you see what had, it's difficult to imagine how any animal lover or pet owner could ever decide to abuse their furry friends in any possible way. Yet, cases of animal abuse and neglect are reported around the world every single day and, sadly, they don't seem to be nearing an end. When United Kingdom-based cat shelter Bradford Cat Watch Rescue received an urgent call from local police regarding two neglected kittens, they had no idea what was in store for them. Still, they'd rescued countless cats over the many years, so they figured they'd seen just about everything. Whatever it was, it couldn't be too bad. Right, wrong. When they arrived, they discovered two kittens, who were estimated to be just 1 month old, in this shocking condition. Someone seemed to have colored in their white fur with permanent markers, leaving them blue and green, respectively. Katie Jane, the volunteer at Bradford Cat Watch Rescue in the United Kingdom who received the kittens, named them Shrek and Smurf for their respective colors. Here at BCWR, we often consider ourselves to be unshockable. Katie said in an interview, "We have dealt with most situations, but this is a first," she continued. Katie gave the pair of kittens bottles of milk and she prepared many baths for them, but she had to be very careful not to do too much at once or else they'd be overwhelmed. They were so tiny, after all. The little kittens couldn't handle so much stress in such a short period of time. For this reason, it was important that the team treated them as delicately as humanly possible. These poor little animals had endured so much up to that point. The little kittens couldn't handle so much stress in such a short period of time. For this reason, it was important that the team treated them as delicately as humanly possible. These poor little animals had endured so much up to that point. Katie was sure not to get any of the marker solution in their eyes or mouths. Cleaning the traumatized kittens was a long and difficult process, but it was necessary. She simply had to be as careful and as gentle as possible. The patient kittens looked grateful to have shed their terrible, abusive past. Still, they remained relatively shocked from the entire ordeal, almost like they couldn't believe someone who they'd trusted could be so cruel to them. After a few more baths and a ton of reassuring cuddles from the staff at the rescue, Shrek and Smurf were beginning to look close to normal. Thank goodness there were people who were brave and kind enough to save these two precious kittens. It's still unimaginable how anyone could find it in themselves to treat animals with such utter disrespect. Thankfully, even though they might have had a rather rough start, these two adorable kittens are getting a second chance now. Chances are, no matter where you live, you have probably spotted a stray cat wandering around outside. Most of the time, they do just fine by themselves, but sometimes they need a little help from their human friends. 18-year-old Hamdan Shibli was on his usual route to work in Israel when things took a strange turn. On the dirt road sat three tiny kittens, huddled together and terrified. After looking around to see if their mother was anywhere nearby, he decided to move them off the road. But shortly after moving the kittens to a patch of roadside bushes, Hamdan realized that these weren't just any kittens. A closer look then revealed they were something truly special. When Hamdan Shibli found a pair of kittens on a dirt road in Israel, their mother was nowhere in sight. If he left the kittens where they were, Hamdan was sure they wouldn't stand a fighting chance. He had no choice but to move them off the road. Hamdan decided to place them carefully in some bushes until their mother came back. There, he discovered a third kitten. At first he considered bringing them home, but then he realized that the mother might have just left them to go and hunt for some food. However, Hamdan was in for a seriously major shock. Instead of moving them far away, he simply decided to place them off the road, in a nearby bush. Afterward, he posted his pictures of the kittens online and was informed that they weren't any ordinary kittens. They were actually jungle cats, a large wild cat native to Asia. Quick research told Hamden that the kittens were in a much more dangerous position than he had initially thought. Right away, he rushed back to where he'd left them and found them in the same spot. They were weak, and their mother still hadn't returned. They appeared to be in very bad shape and their fur was covered in ticks, so he placed them in a basket and took them to find help. He knew he would need to act quickly if he was going to help save these poor jungle cats. Hamden took both of the kittens to the nearest emergency animal clinic that he could find. The doctors immediately got to work doing their best to save the kittens. Tragically, one of the kittens didn't make it. The others fought on. Still, losing the one kitten was tough, and Hamden couldn't help but beat himself up over it. The doctors and the nursing staff at the emergency clinic assured him that there was little he could have done. One might be lost, but there was still hope for the other two. Thankfully, the animal clinic where Hamden happened to bring the kittens didn't just specialize in treating the average house cat or pet dog. They were a clinic that specialized in the care of wild animals. The jungle cat kittens were in good hands. Very quickly, Hamden and the medical team on staff began to learn all they could about their two new very special feline charges. The two kittens were both male and no more than 5 weeks old. They were so young to be left on their own. Both of the kittens were starving and were extremely dehydrated. This was a sorry state of affairs, but it was also one that the medical team knew they could treat. The kittens were given fluids and vitamins, along with a milk substitute. The challenge was to get their weight up and still be able to reintroduce them to the wild when they were ready. Jungle cats are born to be wild and free creatures. The medical team wanted them to be happy and healthy, but they didn't want to put a damper on their wild spirits. The kittens were kept on their special liquid diet and the results were good. They started to gain weight, and as they did they began to grow. Eventually, they were able to eat solid food. This was a critical step when it came to getting them ready to get back into the wild. Their prognosis was looking up. As they grew, it wasn't just their physical well-being that improved. The kittens' entire personalities began to change. They were no longer the fearful little creatures who had been rushed into the hospital. They were curious and friendly little kittens. Once they started eating solid food, it was like they just couldn't stop. These kittens were different from other felines who could be particular about the kind of food they enjoy. These two refused to pass on any grub that came their way. They sure liked eating. These jungle cats, like all felines,